Bava Kama. Today's daf is daf Ayin Dalad, and just to recap where we are up to, we're having an interesting discussion between Abaye and Rava if Hakosha Tchilas Hazama or not, which means as follows: if you have two pairs of Adim that contradict each other, you have Group A and Group B, and Group B contradicts Group A. Then comes along Group C and Amazim Group A. Is there any hazard? They say to Group A, how can you say that you saw this and this when you were with us at the time? Imanu Hayisa. Is there still hazama? Because once they contradicted Group B, maybe we just tossed the whole Adis out. There's no longer any Adis here. What are you being mazim? So that's called Hakosha Lav Tchilas Hazama. Hakosha is a separate entity altogether. So if you have two groups of Adim who contradict each other, we throw the entire Adis out of court. If another group comes the next few hours or the next few days and tries to be mazin the first group and say, hey, how can you say whatever you said? They said nothing because they're no longer in existence. That's the view of Hakosha. That's Abaye Lav Tchilas Hazama. Then we have Rava. Rava says Hakosha Tchilas Hazama. Rava says no, that even though they contradicted each other, if another group comes along and says to the first group, but you weren't there at the time, it's a valid hazama because we don't just completely throw out. Hachosh is the beginning of the journey, and if it turns into hazama, then so be it. And therefore, we will find the first group guilty and we'll charge them whatever penalty they try to charge that innocent person. That's the argument. And Rava brings a proof. And just quickly remind you of the proof, because in Tiger Gemara today, most Gemara will be on this proof. Rava brings the proof in the case of the follows. A guy comes into court and says that this person blinded his slave, and then he knocked out his tooth, which means the slave is free, because if you knock out a tooth or blind a person, or knock out one of the 24 Evodim, Rosh Evodim, he goes free, so he's free. But now, he was a free man, and you went ahead and you broke a tooth. That tooth is not that expensive, that's what you owe. So the Brisa used the words, and the master is very happy with this testimony. And then it says, turn out to be this group is lying, liars. They have to pay the value of the eye to the slave. So what's first of all, what do you mean? They try to free a slave here, and so they should be paying the value of the slave to the master, and not just for the eye or the tooth, but for the entire slave. So the Rabbi therefore concludes, there must have been three groups of testimony. The first group we don't mention the Brisa because they came first. The first group of Brisa came along and said that you knocked out his tooth and then you blinded him, which means that he's free anyway. So there's no contradiction in between the first and second group. They both say he's free. End of the story. So you owe nothing to the master, whether they lied or not. Both groups are saying he's free. But according to the first group, the master owes him the money for an eye, because that was the second thing they knocked out. According to the second group, the master only owes him for a tooth. So the master is very happy. I like the price of a tooth. So then when they were mazim, when they went ahead and they were mazim the what do you call it? The second group for saying the tooth. So now they have to pay when they were mazim the group, they have to pay for the value of a what was the group? What do you call it? They have to pay the value of an eye to the Eved, because the first group that is credible said to the Eved, your eye was knocked out second, which is worth $1,000. The second group said, nah, all you lost was your tooth when you were a free man. It only worth $100. So they try to cheat the Eved out of $900. So when they were the second group were caught liars, so they have to pay now, reimburse the Eved the $900 trying to cheat from him. Now, L'chayda, the first group already contradicted the second group. If you say that Hakosha throws the entire Eidos out of court, there's no Hazama here. Doesn't that prove, says Rava, that Hakosha Tchilas Hazama? Okay, that's now, even though they contradict each other, it's at the beginning of a journey, and if the agent later say you Mano Yisem, they're going to be tossed out. They're going to be paying that penalty. Come along, Abaye, the bottom of the page. Omar Abaye, Daf Ayin Gimel Abaye is the very last line. Abaye who says Hakosha Lav Tchilas Hazama says there's no proof from here, because remember in this Brisa nowhere does it say there were three groups of Adam. It just says two. And we just threw in another group first, and what forced us to say that is because the master's happy with this agent. Why would the master be happy when the group says your evidence is free? It must be that the evidence is free regardless. Must have been another group. That's wrong. Comes along, Abaye says, "Anechti getag." Why now? The avchinu ve'azminu. What happens is he says here we're going to swap around the testimony. There is no third group here, because Abaye says if your story is correct, then there would be no hazam here whatsoever. Because once you contradict each other, there's no hazam here whatsoever. So what's going on here? It's talking about that this group came along and said that the second you knocked out you blinded him and then you knocked out his tooth. The second group came along and said two things. The first of all, Iman Yusuf, you weren't even there on Sunday. Second of all, you're right. Monday something happened. The Baal bus hit him, but the other way around. Knocked out first of all his tooth and then gouged his eyes. So in this case over here, so there's a free man for the eye. So there's no hakosha here at all. It just comes, just hazama, but even the second group agrees that the eved is free. So the first group doesn't have to pay money for trying to free an eved that wasn't that the story didn't happen because it didn't happen. According to the second group, so the eved is free anyway. The question is only was it the tooth of the eye, and because you tried to cheat the eved from the money of an eye because you said what happened was the tooth was number two, therefore they have to pay the money. That's it. Nothing to do with no three groups. Says the Gemara, how do I know there are only two groups here? The Seifa, the Mefer, because the next case in the B'nai, which we'll talk about in a minute, you have to learn there are only two groups. The Hazam, there was that what the second group came along as Mazin the first, and they turned the story around. They said we agree in principle something happened, but that your order, different order, reversed order is Reisha Nami ben Mefer v'Hazam. The Reisha also is talking about the Mefer and Hazam. The Tani Seifa, what does it say in the Seifa? We're testifying about a person. So the Adam came along and said, knocked out his tooth and then blinded him. And the Eved agrees. The Eved likes it because he's going to get money for the eye after a free man. It's a lot more money, $1,000 versus $100 if it's tooth, because the fact is both of them happened. The Nimtzu Zaimi comes out, the liars. They wanted the master to pay more money, to pay the money for an eye, so they have to pay the money. They have to pay. Now, how do I know those two groups? Hey, Chidami. Before we get to that, how do I know that the second group Maziman also agree in principle the story happened? They swap it around because if they don't, if the second group says it never happened, then then why are you only paying for the money of an eye? You tried to free an evidence, never happened. Yeah, so you have to pay money for the entire evidence. But if the second group is not made at all that something happened, that Balabas wounded his evidence, then they make cool evidence that has to pay the entire money. Ella Pshita, surely they come made kulu b'chabala. Both groups agree chabala. Navas, second group says it happened, but not the order that you say, the other way around. First was the what do you call it? First was the eye and then was the tooth. So you try to cheat the master to pay more money. You wanted him to pay the money of an eye when in fact all he owes is the money of a tooth. Now, how do I know there wasn't a third group here? If there was a third group here, how do I know that it was maybe the same way Rabbi learned with three groups, the first case and the second case? Because in this case here, if there was another group and that other group came along and said, so what happened here? This guy came along and said, what do you call it? This group here came along and said it knocked out the eye, second, right? First the tooth, then the eye. If there was another group that said the other way around, what would Bezdin have paskened? Bezdin would have paskened like the group that says the tooth. Why would Bezdin have paskened the group that says the tooth? Because everyone agrees at least you owe $100. So if Bezdin would have paskened like the group who said the tooth, comes out that the group who said the eye, which is the case in the Sefer, not like the nation, the group said it was a tooth. It's like the group said the eye, means that Bezdin doesn't recognize the testimony at all. We didn't act on their testimony because we're acting on the testimony of this other group that said that the second thing acted on the tooth. We know that Adam Zaymin will not be considered Adam Zaymin unless the Bezdin paskin according to what their Adis was, and now because the Bezdin paskin, now we're going to punish you. So if there was another group that said the second thing was a tooth, and this group here said the second thing was an eye, and then Bezdin would have paskin like if Bezdin had paskin at all, there's nothing to Zaymin. Zaymin is only after Bezdin paskin. So if the Bezdin, how would the Bezdin paskin that the tooth you have to pay for, and that's it. I mean, the second group didn't add anything to the story. The first group already said he was a free man because he was blinded, and then he had to pay for the tooth. So what did the second Adis contribute? Nothing, because we discount completely. They discount completely according to everybody. There's no hazama here. Must be there is no third group here. There are only two groups here: the Adim, the Mazimin, and the Adim Zaymin. The Adim Zaymin, the first group, they came along and said, "Look, the guy, they were knocked out his tooth and then blinded him, so they wanted the master to pay for an eye." Came along the second group and said it was the other way around. Plus, so therefore, the fact that you tried to free the Eved is not cheating because that's true. But the fact that you tried to make the master pay the Eved for the eye when in fact all he had to pay for the tooth, that's what you have to pay. Nothing to do with hachasha. There's no hachasha. There's no third. The only time you have a hachasha is three groups. So the two groups knock each other out. The Rava brings it out. And they're still talking about hazama means hachasha is chil's hazama. I'm telling you, there was no third group here. In the Sefer, you can't say there's a third group because if it was a third group, then the group that we're talking about here, nobody paskin like them at all, so there wouldn't be hazama. So, and therefore, since the Sefer that way, I'll say the same thing with the Reisha. There's only two groups here.
There's no innovating zone unless they're based in extra passing. Isn't the whole problem kasher zomam? The whole problem is it didn't happen yet. They just wanted.
Yeah, but talking cheap. It's only when we're learning more in markets. It's only when the bezin paskins before they actually carry it out. It's in that little window. Yeah. The moment they carry it out, it's too late. It's too late. The moment the bezin didn't paskin, then it's not yet a psak. It's not a psak. It's nothing. It's just words, and it has to be attention. So you could only when bezin paskins based. Only when is it aegis? Only when bezin paskins on it. If bezin didn't paskin, I know. What didn't happen? It did. The punishment didn't happen. They wanted to do. They wanted lasses that this person should be killed for Mechal Shabbos. Bezin hasn't done that yet. But Bezin had to paskin that this person is Mechal Shabbos. Otherwise, it's not really aegis yet. The aegis hasn't been acted on, so it's not really said. But we'll see later how we know. Says the Gemara. Yeah, very much so. Now, Gemara said, we're not happy yet. With this last group that came along, and they said that he was set free. What happened? So a group A says the Balbas said, first of all, knocked out his tooth on Sunday, so he's a free man, and then he blinded him on Sunday. Comes group 2 and says, no, Monday the Balabas first knocked out his, gouged his eye, and then his tooth. So, and you're telling me that therefore the first Adam were found liars, but they don't have to pay for freeing an Evid because the Evid was going to be free regardless, right? Because the second group agrees. But we learned in Maramakis that if the second group comes along and says, you say Reuben killed Shimon on Monday, you were with us on Monday somewhere else, but it happened on Tuesday. The Eidim Zayim will still get killed because when you came and testified that happened on Monday, the fact is he's still a free man. Nothing happened yet. He became a murderer on Tuesday, but Kati Gabel Abachyu. Same thing here. If the second group of Eidim say it happened on Monday, and you say it happened on Sunday, so on Sunday Taka was still an Eved. So you tried to free an Eved on Sunday. Who cares that Monday he became free for another reason? The fact is that on Sunday you tried to free an Eved. So why don't they have to pay for the Demei Eved, the value of the Eved? What happened? If they say that the time that the Balabas hit the Eved was afterwards, they still have to pay the value of the Eved because they try to free an Eved. Because when they said that the Eved you hit and all that, the Eved was not a free man because the story that really happened was the next day, the following day. So we answer that's not an issue. These Basroi, the first group came and said on Monday the Balabos struck him, and twice, and the second group came in later and says no, it happened on Sunday. So therefore they established already that he was already not an Eved on Sunday. So the only argument is which order. But it's not. I'm not happy yet. If Lepoil Bezin did not paskin yet. If Bezin not passing that he's a free man, even though they come right now and say that that it happened, it happened on Sunday, but the fact is he only came now. So the fact is that when this first group came in and said, "Hey, the Balabas, on Monday hit him and everything else," when they said that he was not yet a free man, even though the story actually happened the day before, but that wasn't established till afterwards. So at the time when you made the Edis, the Kati Gabachiyuvi, so you must say there was another group. This group came to Bezin, and the Bezin that told us the Bezin the story, and Bezin Paskin on Sunday that this guy is a free man, and the Balbas ran away with him, and the Eved got a hold of other Eidim who said this story over here. So that group is out of the picture. They just established he's a free man. So therefore, even though this group now that came along are found to be liars, they don't have to pay for Tamei Eved because he was Taka free man already. There was established other ones, and all we're focusing on is the Zaymin and the Mazim. So there's no hakoshia that the Rava wants to bring in of the two groups contradicting each other. Only that you can marry a woman. Tivali is giving nothing. He refuses. That's the whole story. Yeah, Bezin will make him free als avdus, but he cannot marry a bas chayrin yet. That's right. And the Bezin was going to say that. Yeah. Zakat Yom Chayiv. He's an ogun. He's a no man's land, yeah. That's exactly right. Ella the Amma Bedin. You have to say that Ben already passed somewhere else. So you could even the Rava Abaye is very valid. How does Rava know to learn that there were three witnesses, two sets of witnesses contradicting each other, and of course we continue perceiving Hazama proves our point. How does he know? He says it can't be from the first part of the Brisa, which is what we learned in the beginning. Why? Because the Reisha in the Reisha, what happened in the Reisha? There were two. The ratio was like this. The Braisa said over here, a group came along and said that he knocked out the what do you call it? The eye, and then he gouged the eye, and then he knocked out his tooth, right? And your Rava came along and said that's group two, because the master is happy. Why is the master happy? Why is the master happy? You're freeing an Evan when he wasn't free. No, because the other Adam also said he's a free person. The question is, how much money does the master have to pay? In group two, how much does he have to pay? The price of a tooth. So he's happy with that testimony, right? So you want to bring it out from there that we continue with Hazama, that we knock out group two. Is that even though they will contradict each other, Hakosha is Tchil Hazama? No, it isn't. How's the Bezin going to pass when the two groups are here, right? Remember, you need a psak before the third group comes. How do you think the Bezin paskins? The Bezin paskins like group two. They said, yeah, pay the money for tooth, because both groups agree that there's money owed, because there was a second question: what happened to the second wounding? So that we'll take the minimum amount. Pay the amount of a tooth, $100, not the amount of an eye. Who was the one who said the tooth? The second group, group B. They said the tooth, and Bezin is passing like them. That means nobody's contradicting them. In fact, the psak is like group B. So how does Rabbi want to prove from here that Akosha, Tchilas Hazama, there is no Akosha, because Bezin passing like group. In fact, Bezin discounted group A. And who is the one, according to the Raisa, that we're saying, oh, Hazam and everything else is group B? The one who said the second thing was the tooth. What's that Kasha here? Doesn't pass like them. So therefore, what's going on here? Says the Gemara, the Reisha can't bring it out. Where is he learning from? The middle group, are they being contradicted? If it wouldn't have been for group C that came along and said to group B, you were with us somewhere else at the time, how did Bezin Paskin? The sentence of Bezin was, Master, you got to pay the price of a tooth, which aligns with the testimony of Group B. The Dini Kabasaya Paskin. Why would Bezin Paskin align themselves with Group B? Because the Yesh Bechal Messiah Mana. Group A says you owe $200 because you knocked out his eye second. Group B says you only owe $100 because you knocked out his tooth second. So Bezin is going to say, well, everyone agrees he owes at least $100. That's how we're going to pass him. So who are we aligning with? Group B, which means Group B was not contradicted at all. So where's that kasha? Are you saying here's a raya? Where? On the contrary, the first one gets rejected. The second group is not rejected at all. So where's Rabba's raya? Rabba hold with the Reisha. We definitely established that the Reisha is talking about his raya from the Sefer. But and I'm going to learn the Sefer says Rabba is three groups, not like a Abai has two groups. How do I know the three groups in the Sefer? Because the Reisha has three groups, and the fact that three groups in the Reisha doesn't help me as far as that Akash, as we just explained. But you have to learn, because the Brisa says that the master likes the testimony that the tooth was second. Why did the master like the testimony? If there was no first group, this is the first group. You try to free an Evid. You try to free an Evid that wasn't meant to be freed. Why was he happy with the testimony? Why would we be happy? Must be there was already another group that said that the evidence is free. The only question is how much money do you owe? So the master likes group B because he owes a lot less money. So since the Reish is talking about three groups, two groups are arguing about the order of events, and the third group that says Yimono Yisim, I'll learn the Sefer the same way. And he said yes. And now once we've established the Sefer about three groups, it's the Sefer keep going to us, and this is the story. Keep going to us, but here the story is a little bit different. In the Reisha, the group that's missing is the first group, and the Brisa focuses on from the second group who starts arguing. In the Sefer, and this is why Abaye doesn't like Rabbi Prat at all, the group that the Brisa addresses is group A, is group one. They come in and they're the ones who say that first is the tooth and then the eye. And group B, the Brisa forgot to mention, who reversed the order. And when the Brisa says the Eved likes this testimony because he's going to get more money. If he's blinded, his eye is blinded, number two, he likes the testimony versus the other testimony that was only his tooth. And that was group two, group B. Says the Gemara, yes. The Daik, you're going to also be today, but they say, he pilish, you never see me. That's what the writer says. And we have to remember, we have to paskin. Because if the Bryce said we're focusing on the guy who said blinding the eye second, and another group came in and said the tooth was second, which way would Bezna paskin? The tooth was second because of the minimum amount. Otherwise, and we have to have this a psak, otherwise there's no hazama. And yet the Bryce says that blinding his eye is what Bezin said. And according to Rav, there's another group. So it must be that this group came on its own first, and there's no contradiction. So Bezin said, okay, halach is you set the evet free and you owe for the eye. So Bezin paskin based on this group. The following day, another group comes to Bezin and says, hey, that's not what happened. We're contradicting. There's a reverse order. The sequence is wrong. So Bezin, now you have to retract your psak. But Bezin already gave a psak, which is critical, otherwise there's no hazama. So Bezin gave a psak on group A. Group B that came in reverse order, right, came in reverse order, now they contradicted it. And Bezin is going to repeal or retract or rescind their psak, which means that it's hakosha, it's real hakosha now. Because we're going to pass like the second group, pay only the amount of a tooth, which is not like the first group that said pay the amount of the eye. So we're contradicting it. So how come the next day Zaymim come in and Mazimim come in and they say you were with us, we're going to punish the group. If hakosha knocks the whole thing out, it's over. Must be hakosha chilazam. And it's obviously everybody's not going to like it because the most important critical part of the story you missed out. Group B that came and contradicted Group A. It's one thing in the first part, the first group that came and just established something. We didn't mark any psak yet, and then Group B came along. So the Raisa starts from where the descent begins. But in this second, in the Sefer, it's Group A that the Raisa talks about, and the Bezin Paskin. And very important to the story is that tomorrow Group B came and contradicted them, and so on. So that's why Bible doesn't like. But this is what Rava says. It's a haldi cup. And we paskin like this group that what? That the second thing was the eye, and the master now has to pay for an eye. The following day, two others come along, the other way around. They're contradicting the testimony of the first, and they tell the bezin, you have to rescind your psak. It's wrong. Right? The nimtzu. So what happens now? Bezin doesn't know what to do. So Bezin is going to pass him like Group B, a tooth, because a tooth, everyone agrees you owe at least $100. Exactly, everyone agrees a minimum of 100, so pay the 100. Now, then it says the nimtzu zaymin. Group C comes along and says to the Group A, but you were with us at the time. So the first group now who tried to make the master pay for an eye, and the Bezin even passed him like them for a day. So you now have to pay them. I mean, they could be Muslim. If you tell me a contradiction, you throw out a court. They were contradicted. That hakosha is, we don't just toss it out. It's the beginning of a journey, and if you found lies later, it's so be it. And there's continuation. Abaya malach. The Reisha have no choice to learn with three groups because it says that the master, is happy, what's going on, and so forth. So they had no choice, but why would the master be happy at all? It must be there's another group who said he's free anyway. Okay, so it says the master is happy. Why would the master be happy when they come along and say your Evid is free because you beat him up? If it's not true, you just stole my Evid. Must be that the other group came and said a similar story. Exactly. The question is only how much money he owes to the Evid, the value of a tooth or the value of a iron. And he's happy because this group here says that all he owes is the money for a knocked out tooth. Why do I need to learn three groups? What does it say? The Evid says, you know what? Even though it was the tooth was number 2. So let's say I'm happy. The truth of the matter is, Evid Kodu, maybe. Do you think the Evid cares? The Evid is happy no matter what they said. I'm a free man. If it costs me my eye to be free, I'm happy. Freedom is the most, and you can't put a price on freedom. So he's so happy that he's been set free that there's no problem why had they ever get. I don't care what the Adam say. As long as the Adam say that he's the free man, they don't care. The he's happy to go out free. And to learn like Rava, he says, I find it very difficult because the critical part of the story is missing. Because it was Group B that the Braisa doesn't talk about. Don't like that. Maskala Zeta digresses. How do you know? The whole assumption here is that if you knock out a tooth and then blind him, for knocking out a tooth he goes free, and for blinding him you have to pay. Maybe when the Torah says that you knock out a tooth, you blind him, he goes free. And if you knock out both, all it is, you go free. How do you know that one of them sets him free and the other one now you got to reimburse like a free man? Maybe it all joined together. So the Gemara, let's say, Simas and you blinded him. He goes, say he said free because you blinded him. He pulled a shini, knocked out his tooth. He goes free because he knocked out his tooth. Simas he pulled a shini. He did both. Maybe he goes free because he did both. No, if you look closely at the pasuk says that if a person, hits strikes his evet, hits him in the eye, or is made, and then what it goes. It says in the pasuk, tachas einoi, just for gouging his eye, you set him free. And then the next pasuk says, and shein avdoi, another story. Then tachas shinoi, and by shin it says tachas shinoi. Lashon Yochid to tell you, tachas einoi, v'loy tachas einoi v'shinoi. One does it. So the second one doesn't add anything. So obviously he's a free man now. You're own for that. Tachas sheni, v'loy tachas sheni, v'loy tachas sheni v'einoi. His tooth and not his tooth and his eye. Anyway, continue. So we have a machlekes about Rava if hakosha tchilas hazama or not. Rava says that hakosha is not you just throw out a cord, but tchilas hazama, it's still there. And Abaye says no, hakosha is knocked out. There's nothing left to be mazim. In fact, we learned that way also. I can support, and that it follows. It says gonef apishnayim. Let's say two witnesses saw the guy steal. And the same two witnesses say the guy then shechted the animal, so he paid 4 or 5 times. The nimtzuz they were found liars. Mishalmin leis hakel. And the two for the Zayim, they have to pay 4 or 5 times. Not my lab. We're gonna like we had yesterday. It probably follows the sequence. They eat all neighbor. First, there were 2 separate lots of the testimony. First, they said the guy stole it, and then the Chazv Yido ala Tvicha. Then they came along and said the guy shechted it. Then Behuzmu, and then they were found liars. Ala Gneva, they were found liars on the Gneva. The Chazru Behuzmu ala Tvicha, and then they were found liars on the Tvicha. In other words, the sequence of the Eidos, that's how they were found liars. Now the question is follows: once they've been established that the guy never stole it, right? So automatically, even though they didn't talk about the shechting, they contradicted the story of the shechting. You say he shechted a stolen animal. Well, once we establish it's not stolen, then even if he did shecht it, it wasn't a stolen animal. So they're contradicting it's hakosha. So how come it says, but if later the 2 agents come along and say, how can you say you saw him shechting when you were with us? You have to pay the amount, the extra penalty, but you're already mukhish, you're already contradicted. Doesn't that prove that hakosha is tchilas hazama, that like rubber, that it's not thrown out completely, and therefore if later on your mazim, it's a valid hazama. But once you establish that they didn't steal it, he's contradicted by tvicha. Ukatani misham they pay everything. If you can tell me that what contradicting is not the beginning of hazama, then not tvicha on the shechting, amay mishalmin, why pay? It's already mukhish. Must be that it's the beginning of a journey. Ami Sabayil answer back, no. Who told you the same thing we said before? Who told you the sequence was that the Hazama first was on the Gneva and then the Hazama was on the Shechting? The Hazama was the other way around. First they mazim on the Tzvicha and then they were mazim on the Gneva. So there was no hakosh here at all, no contradiction. When they said that the guy, you couldn't have seen him shech because you were with us, we're not contradicting that he stole it. Maybe he stole it. That was the day before. Well, you weren't there. Nothing about it. So therefore, that Eidos still remains. So if tomorrow a group of Eidos come along and say, how can you say you stole on that day? You're with us. It's a valid hazama. Nothing to do with hakosha here. Who's more ala tvicha tchila? The first thing is they knocked out was the shechting. And that's it. Now the Gemara says that this machlekes of a Abaye Rava. Okay, we couldn't bring a eye from Tanoim, but the Sechela machlekes other maroim. Uplukta eidim shehukru sayvuzur Rabbi Yechon Rabbi Lazar. It's an Aga Rabbi Yechon Rabbi Lazar, and what his student Rabbi Lazar. Chadama, one of them says Neherogin. What happened like this? Eidim that were found like that was associated with the story is the Eidim that were contradicted, and then they were found to be liars. What happens to these Eidim? They tried to convict someone, and then they were found to be and they were contradicted about whether that person deserved to be convicted for murder, let's say, and then they were found to be liars. That's hakosher, and then there was hazama. Do we throw it out altogether so there's no hazama anymore? We say, no, they're Muslim. One of them says, Nerogin, we'll kill the Eidim. In other words, we don't just toss it out. Hakosha, tchilas hazama, even though they were contradicted by another group, but then they were found liars. That's it. The chadamar ein nerogin. Testayim will conclude that Rabbi Lezer damar ein nerogin will conclude. Rabbi Lezer says that they don't get killed. Why? Because he holds that hakosha is a lav tchilas hazama. Rabbi Lezer holds like Abaye. Rabbi Lezer says eidim shehukashu. If Aiden, let's say, were contradicted, beneficial. One group of agents say that Reuben killed somebody, he deserves to be killed. Another one says, no, Reuben did not kill somebody, he deserves to be killed. Is liking, he says, so what do? You give Malchus. You give the Malchus for lying. The Gemara's going to ask in a minute, which group do you give Malchus to? That's the whole point. We don't know who's telling the truth. We'll see in a minute. We give them Malchus. Now, the problem is this. We have a rule that if you commit a crime that is tied to being killed, Misa, we don't give Malchus. Lav, Shanit, and Laz, Malchus. Why are you giving Malchus to these people? Must be that they can never get killed. Why can't they get killed? Because they contradicted each other, which means it can never lead to Hazama. So it must be that Blazer holds that Hakosha Lav Tchilas Hazami. Now that they contradict each other, we throw them out of court. This long Taisus asks, as long as it's tied to Misa, who cares who gets, if this particular case will never lead to Misa, you don't get Malchus. What's going on then? If it wouldn't have been Hakosha, it could have ended Misa. It could have been Hazama without Hakosha. They would have been killed. So what do you mean this is not a Lav Shanit and Laz Haraz Misa Bezin? That's a long Taisus. But anyway. Who dominate argument? If Blazer holds that that they do get killed, in other words, it can lead to Azama. I might like him. Why to get Malchus? Having lunch is going to be the best, and it could. This very Adis, even though they're contradicted, can lead to death for these Adim if later on they were Muslim. Is that right? Yeah, exactly. It must be that this can never ever end up in Misa because Akasha is not Chilas Azama. Once they were contradicted, end the story. Yes, good conclusion. Now ask a general question. Like in the two groups of eight, and one of them says Reuben is Chaymis, one of them Reuben is Chaymis, and you give them out to who? Today Ninu, one of them is definitely telling the truth, and one of them definitely is lying. My Chazi is Samachahani. How do you know which group is telling the truth? How do you know which one to give Malchus to? I'm going to buy you the Bar Harag Barag. Got a little bit of a problem there. That the one that they say the victim that's dead, they say Reuben killed Shimon. Suddenly Shimon walks into court. And then obviously we now know who the liars are, and they're getting Malchus. So no, we ask the question. Interesting. The Nabi was asked the question. We have a rule we mentioned yesterday that today Kimeya. If you have 100 witnesses that say that Reuben killed Shimon, and 2 that say Reuben didn't, it's Hakosha. Today Elif, because the whole thing is there is Hakosha. So if a Harag walks in, like 2 Adim walked in, so it's 2 against 4. So what if he's here? But Adim say that he's dead. That's what he asks.
That's mathematics versus Metzias.
So he says the whole thing Halacha Moshe Messina. It's not a logical thing. It's not a question of probability. Because if it was a logical thing, question of probability, then you say, look, 100 versus 2. Yeah, 100 versus 2. Of course you believe the 100. No, Halacha Messina. So the guy walks in.
You have a set. It doesn't matter how big the set of 8 is. You have a set of 8.
Yeah. Along the line, he says, Davar Shekola Olam. He says something that the whole world knows that this is the Metzias. Then it's not a question of Adis. It's more like something like that. So that and it brings a taste of
Adis is basically an extension of the eyes of the judge. I can't see it happening right in front of me. I'll talk to these people. They did see it.
We have a rule. We had Rosh Hashanah. Loi tehei shmiya gedola Maria. What he heard, the Adim, the Dayan themselves saw the new moon. Do they need to have Adim? They saw it. The whole idea of Adim is to tell them, you be our eyes. The question is more interesting than the answer. Yeah, I think I just thought the question was marvelous. Anyway, let's go to the Mishnah.
Like I said, it's a mathematical question as opposed to the Metzias.
Exactly. It's like
standing here. It's not the whole group. It's about
so now you conclude that this guy is a spinning image of the guy who's dead. Because 2 agents said he's dead. Yeah, 2 agents. He didn't even know about it. Separated at birth. Says the Mishnah. This is the flip side of the Mishnah we did last time. You stole 2 witnesses. By 2 witnesses, so you steal. But you only shechted based on 1 aid. Remember, this is a knasta penalty, and you only have 1 aid. An aid cannot first of all make you pay money. Or a pi'atma. You came in and you said, look, I'm a ganif, but I shechted it. So you made it on the next element, the knas part, is mishal and tashum keva. You pay for what we've established that you're a ganif, but ain't a shal. You don't pay the extra layer because you made it, or an eidecha doesn't have the capacity to make you pay. Gona v'tov Shabbat. If you went ahead and you shechted and stole on Shabbos, when you're going to get killed for it. Or gona v'tov avodah zara. You stole and you shechted to avodah zara, where you're going to get killed for it. Then is come lay with the rabbi b'nei. You don't pay the dollar b'nei. And what happens? We had it as well. Gonab Mishal Aviv, you stole when it was belonged to your father, but then the mess Aviv, and now it passes on to the children. You're one of the children.
So is he a Yerush or is he a Ganav?
Oh, and we learned before, since when he shechted it, it wasn't kulei be'isura. Tvacha means that the entire tvicha was done illegally. Here, my share, I have a right to shech. So I only did, 3/4 of it, whatever it was. So then you don't pay the dalvei. Mochar, mochar, Gonaf, he stole it, the higdish, and he made it hegdish. And then he shechted and
he owes hektish.
No, but so he did not steal meguna from Beis Ish. When do you pay the extra? All these penalties only meguna Beis Ish, not from hegdish, not from hegdish. We already learned how to become hegdish. Exactly. So there's yiv, but even yiv should like kana how to become hegdish. So it's yiv either in Shini Hashem or yiv and Shini Rishus. But here it's a unique kind of a case because the sort of the Shine Hashem and your activity. Usually we say that Shine Rishus, and now I can do with it whatever I want. Here, what made it the Shine Hashem? My activity. And what made it the Shine Rishus? The fact that I gave it to Hegdish. So they're both having in tandem. They're both having in tandem. And the Rav already explains how it works.
All of this could be Shalom Das Abayim.
No, talking about the years. Talking about those years.
The guy doesn't even know yet that you took his sheep. Meanwhile, we already were makdish and then shechted it.
Okay, true, yeah. Tashlumi kefil, you pay kefil because that's been established. Rav Shimon says a separate thing. Kodshim, and we'll see more later what he's talking about. Kodshim shechai bechusam. If I took up responsibility for these animals, I made them carbon. Kodesh, I'll bring them back to Midrash. Mishal to Davahei shechai bechusam potter. I pay 4 or 5 times. Why? Because since I'm responsible, it's like still mine. Even though I consecrated it, but since if I lose it, it's like it's mine, and therefore if I shechted it for myself or I sold it, I have to pay the 4 or 5 times. It's not hegdish yet, even though it is hegdish, but I took responsibility. Obviously, there's only 1 8 can't make you pay money. You have to tell me. We compare him to, because these are 2 cases. Either you confess or you eidechad. If single aid says you owe, now this is what happened. Nothing happens. If tomorrow another aid comes along, we combine the 2 aidim, even though it's a machlekes, if the 2 aidim have to come together. But this mission is the Gemara is saying we're going to paskin that you can combine the 2 aidim. So too, al pi atzmenami. If he comes to court and he's made it today, I shechted. You don't pay a penny. What happened tomorrow? Aidim come along and say that you did. He also aidim mechayiv. Just like if you're an aid echad, I cannot make you chayiv. But if another aid comes tomorrow, we join together. So if I confess that I owe made the b'kanas potter, but we had it before a machlekes, Al Mishnah seems to be saying, but if 2 aidim come along tomorrow and say you stole it, even though I was made it today, I now have to pay. This comes to negate the view of Rav. And I told you last time, the argument is when we say Moed b'kanas potter, is the pshat, the reason why potter is because you cannot incriminate yourself. Like you have an American amendment, you cannot incriminate yourself. That's why. So if tomorrow 2 aidim incriminate you, you got to pay. Or is Moed b'kanas a ptur? That is a payment. That means you showed us you were contrite. The whole idea of a penalty is that you won't ever do this again. So the fact that you came forward and you confessed and you're embarrassed, so that's enough. So therefore, that's a ptur. If tomorrow 2 aidim come along and say you stole, so what? You already did your tshuva. Confessing in public is more hurtful than paying a few dollars. So that's the argument. So we want to prove one mission one another. We'll stop here and continue tomorrow.